Alright guys and girls, this is another unofficial notes video. So we're going to see Yesterday we learned pretty much every example. We had x squared and then whatever. So that way we all knew that every single one, a equaled 1. Well, that made it very easy because sometimes you could just guess the factors. But it's a lot harder to guess the factors when a is not equal to 1. So today we're going to be looking at when a, so title this factoring when a does not equal 1. So we're going to look at some different situations where a is not equal to 1 and what we would do to find our answers. Alright, so first example, write this one down. F of x equals 2x squared plus 10x plus 12. Now, on first glance, what is a here? You would say a is 2. A equals 2. But we don't want to deal with a not being 1 when we don't have to. So take a look at this equation. Is there a term, is there a greatest common factor that we can take out of each of these numbers? Yes, there is. We can take out a 2 from everything. So if I pull out a 2, factor out a 2 from this whole equation, that's going to leave me with x squared plus what's 10 divided by 2? That's 5x. What's 12 divided by 2? That's 6. And now after we factored out the 2, we can see that this inside the parentheses, x squared plus 5x plus 6, looks exactly like the problems that we were working on the day before. What is a here? A inside the parentheses would be 1. What would b be? It's 5. And then c is going to be 6. So then we can just solve as we normally do. Make the x box. What goes in the top blank? A times c, that's 6. What goes in the bottom blank? B, that's 5. And what are my two terms that multiply together to give 6 and add together to give 5? That's going to be 3 and 2. And then from here, what's my factored form? It's going to be x plus 3 and x plus 2. But wait a second. Real quick though, x plus 3 times x plus 2, this would actually equal x squared plus 5x plus 6. Is that my original equation up here? No, it's not. Now, this factored form that we got, it only accounts for this part inside the parentheses. So, what are we missing from our original equation? We're missing this 2 that we pulled out earlier. So, that 2 needs to go right here. And then this would be my factored form right here. 2 times x plus 3 times x plus 2. And if I wanted to solve for x, it'd be the exact same thing as we normally do. We set this equal to 0. X plus 3 equals 0. So x equals negative 3. And x plus 2 equals 0. X equals negative 2. All right, that is our first example. Let's go to the next example. So the next one, write this down. F of x equals 6x squared plus 7x plus 2. Now, what's the first thing we always check for? We're going to check for the greatest common factor. But is there any number that comes out of all three of these? No, there's not. So, in this case, our a is actually going to be 6. What is b then? B is 7. And what is c? Is 2. Okay? Now, using this information, let's just draw the x box as we normally would. So what would go on the top? The top is a times c. That's 6 times 2, which is 12. The bottom is b, which is 7. And what are my two terms that multiply to give me 12 but add to give me 7? That's going to be 3 and 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 plus 4 is 7. All right, but here's where the fun part comes in. So when a is not equal to 1, as you can see, a right here is 6. Then you need to stop right here. And then we need to do this process because first let me show you why. If I were to just write my answer x plus 3 times x plus 4, that equals x squared plus 7x plus 12. Is that equal to my original equation up here? No, it's not. So clearly this isn't the right answer. This is not even the right equation. How do we get the right factored form? After we get our side values here, if a is not equal to 1, what we're going to do is set up a fraction like this, draw the fraction line, and on top of the fraction line, you're going to put x. So a is 6, so 6x. All right, the top of the fraction always depends on a. All right, so then from here, we're going to simplify the fraction as much as possible. So this left fraction would simplify to 2x over 1. This right fraction over here would simplify to 3x over 2. All right, so these are our most simplified forms right here. 2x over 1 and 3x over 2. And that tells us what we're going to put into our parentheses. Remember, we have two parentheses right here. So in one of them, we're going to look at the top of the fraction. What's on the top of the fraction right here? It's 2x. I'm going to write 2x. And then what's on bottom? It's a positive 1. So we're going to put 2x plus 1. What would go in my other parentheses then? 3x plus 2. All right? And if we check this, this would actually FOIL out and give me my original 6x squared plus 7x plus 2. All right, and if you wanted to solve for x, you set this equal to 0. Then, same thing as normal, look inside the parentheses. So what's inside one of my parentheses? We have, for example, 2x plus 1. Set that equal to 0. There's a few more steps now, but you can still solve for x. In this case, x would equal negative 1/2. And on the other one, it would be x equals negative 2/3. And that would be my answer. For our third example, let's write down f of x equals negative 2x squared plus 7x minus 5. Now notice here, what is the first thing we check for? Greatest common factor, right? There are no common factors here, so in this case, we can't do anything with that. But the next thing you want to check for is a, right here, is it a negative? Is this one a negative? Yes, it's a negative 2. We do not want a negative in the a's spot, because if it is, that's going to mess up our whole Xbox process, and we don't want to mess that thing up, because then we're just going to get the wrong answer and lose points, and I got to get my grade up, coach. So in that case, what we're going to do to get rid of the negative, we're going to take a negative out of this whole thing. So we're going to pull out a negative, so pull out negative 1. And by doing that, that changes the signs of every single term. So if I pull out this negative 1, instead of negative 2x squared, I'm going to have positive 2x squared. Instead of positive 7x, I'm going to have negative 7x. And instead of negative 5, I'm going to have positive 5. So we've got negative 1 on the outside times 2x squared minus 7x plus 5. Now from here, we can see that a is not negative anymore. A is 2, b is negative 7, and c is 5. So in this case, now we're just going to continue with our Xbox. Oh, wrong. That's not the right color that I used for the Xbox. Okay, that's not it either. There it is. All right, so the top spot is 2a times c, 2 times 5, that's 10. And the bottom spot, it's negative 7 because that's b. Now we got to find our two terms. It's going to be negative 2 and negative 5. But what do we check for right here? Is a 1? No, it's not. A is 2. So what I'm going to do is set up my fractions. And what goes on top? It's a times x. So in this case, it's 2x. Now we're going to simplify our fraction. So on the left side, this one over here simplifies to x over negative 1. And it's very important that we keep the 1 and keep our signs where they are so we know what to write in the parentheses. So this is my simplified form. 2x over negative 5 is already simplified. So now inside my parentheses, I'm going to have x minus 1 times 2x minus 5. All right, but there's one more thing we're missing. Look back at our original equation. We have this factored form, which accounts for the parentheses, but what are we missing? We're missing the negative 1 that was on the outside. We pull out a negative 1, that needs to go back in there, otherwise we don't have our original equation. All right, so my completely factored out form would be negative 1 times x minus 1 times 2x minus 5. If I wanted to solve for 0, I'd set it equal to 0. And then just x minus 1 equals 0, and 2x minus 5 equals 0, and solve for each of those x's. All right, on to our final example of the day. So we're going to write down f of x equals negative 8x squared plus 8x plus 6. What's the very first thing we check for? We check for greatest common factor. In this case, it's a 2. A 2 goes in all of these terms. So then we've got 2 times, what's on the inside now? Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4x squared. Positive 8 divided by 2 is positive 4. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3, so plus 3. What's the next thing we check for, though? We check to see if A is negative. In this case, it is negative. I do not want the negative there, so I'm going to pull out the negative 1. So now on the outside, I've got negative 1, and I have that 2. And then on the inside of my parentheses, the negative 1 changes all the signs. So instead of negative 4x squared, I have positive 4x squared. Instead of positive 4x, I've got negative 4x. And instead of positive 3, I have negative 3. All right, let's simplify a little bit more, because instead of having negative 1 and 2 on the outside, we can just multiply these two numbers together, and that would equal negative 2. All right, there we go. Now let's continue with our Xbox method. A equals 1, B equals negative 4, and C equals negative 3. So with the Xbox, here we go. Boom, boom. A times C was negative. Oh, wow. A is 4, guys. Ha! All right, good thing I heard you. All right, so 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. In the bottom space, it's going to be B, which is negative 4. What are the two factors here? It's going to be negative 6 and positive 2. What do we need to check for right here? Is A 1? No, it is not. It is 4. So I'm going to set up my fraction line. Boom, boom, and put 4x on top of both. Now I'm going to simplify both my fractions. On the left one, it's going to be 2x over negative 3. The right one's going to be 2x over 1. So that means using these two fractions, my factored out form is going to be 2x minus 3 times 2x plus 1. However, what are we forgetting here? We need to bring down this negative 2 that we took out earlier. So there's a negative 2 on the outside right here. And our factored form is negative 2 times 2x minus 3 times 2x plus 1. And if we wanted to solve for 0, once again, we could set it equal to 0. Take what's in the parentheses, 2x minus 3 equals 0. 2x plus 1 equals 0. And solve for x. But these are all the examples that are on the assignment. So you should be able to do them looking at these notes. And that is it for the unofficial notes. See you in the next one. One last one, guys. Peace.